Let's explore whether suffering is really necessary. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The individual wrote, "Is dukkha necessary?" So let's begin with broad brushstrokes, then make our way in the general direction of finer details. The individual wrote, "I've been reading a bit on Buddhism and a few somewhat related philosophers from Western and Eastern traditions such as Jiddu Krishnamurti, John Kabat-Zinn, and Alan Watts. I've learned a bit about dukkha, which seems to be a somewhat complex concept. No, it's not. The quickest way to get if you're bored with simplicity and desire a confusion, then by all means consult a pseudo-intellectual with dodgy motivations. One question I have, does Buddhism regard dukkha as necessary to life? So my job is not to beat you up, but my job is to show you how you've gotten where you are and help you dig your way out. In academia, there's a saying, and publish or perish. And it shouldn't be that way. People should study out of love for the subject and of natural curiosity. And the evidence and the curiosity should direct their research. But sadly, in late-stage capitalism, people are rewarded for having mixed motivations. And so sometimes the question is not what's most interesting and what will further the humanity's body of knowledge, but instead the question is, what can I churn out and get published so I can keep my position or maybe get tenure? So, the motivations of the founder of a school of yoga, such as Buddhism and the Buddha, are often at variance with philosophers who comment on them. Let's continue. So, this was never a question posed by the Buddha. This comes from the first discourse of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. Basically, there's a premise, a dilemma, a solution, and a means of manifesting the solution. Very, very simple. The Buddha presented a path that he claimed could be mastered in a week. So the Buddha was not trying to give pseudo-intellectuals a job for life. He was just trying to show people a simple set of techniques. Questions like this are unnecessary. Think of it this way. Some things are stressful. Ask a biologist, and they'll say, yes, there are circumstantial stressors, physical stressors, interpersonal stressors, and mental stressors. We evolve the capacity to perceive these as an evolutionary response. You show me an ancestor who did not have the capacity to perceive stress, and I'll show you someone who did not pass on his genetic material because he or she perished. The premise of the Eightfold Path is there's stress, there's things that exacerbate the stress, there's a solution, and here's the path to implementing the solution. To say, well, wait a minute, Buddha, I don't think suffering is a bad thing, that's fine. Knock yourself out, go suffer all you want. But that's not Buddha's point. You know, someone's drowning and they throw you a rope. You know, you don't want the guy who's throwing you a rope to be distracted by a shipmate saying, well, is that rope really, sustainable? Because that's not the time to debate. Someone's struggling, they're suffering. Let's help them out. Buddha was able to experience something that neuroscientists have recently been able to verify through fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging studies, that we are already wired for empathy. Not because of philosophy, not because of a choice, because of evolution. All complex life forms have a hunk of meat behind their forehead that makes empathy necessary. So, empathy is not based on philosophy. It's based on perception and mirror neurons. Someone's pain is our pain. We are wired to have a visceral response towards pain. This is a survival mechanism. So empathy is helping us use the mechanism of survival to pole vault beyond mere survival, which in and of itself is beautiful. These philosophers who make you question whether suffering is good or bad are boobs, in the worst sense of the word. These are the type of questions that people ask to justify doing nothing. When the Buddha asks so little, he says, hey, if you want a happier life, play with this technique. You can master it in a week. That's pretty cool. If the means of freeing ourselves from dukkha is available, at least potentially, does this mean that dukkha, while it is a part of life, is not necessary and essential to life? So once again, these type of pseudo-intellectual questions, and this is not your fault. You've been exposed to the pseudo-intellectuals. And like people with a cold that's sneezing on you. Now you've got the virus. Someone might say, suffering is essential to life, therefore let us not transcend suffering. But that's based on, that's what we call a straw man argument in Philosophy 101, where you mischaracterize an opponent's argument to make it easier to defeat. The Buddha didn't say it is essential or inessential. He just said there's suffering. These are the consequences of suffering, or at least the potential consequences of suffering. There is an antidote, and here's how to apply it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. If you're basically saying stress is great, it doesn't matter how we react to stress. It doesn't matter the consequences of stress in our life. That's fine. So if you're going to do that, you're basically undermining the Buddhist teachings, and you're allowed to do that. Zeus is not going to throw lightning bolts at your tushy from Mount Olympus. But bear in mind that some people want to apply the Buddhist teachings and some people don't. That's fine. But there's a subcategory. There's some people who don't want to apply the Buddhist teachings, and they're very, very honest about it. I don't want to. I'd rather watch the wide world of sports and eat chips and drink beer. Fine, knock yourself out. Have fun. Just don't drive drunk. But some people are like, well, I don't want to apply the Buddhist teachings, but I want to feel really superior about it. I want to feel like anybody else who applies the Buddhist teachings is a shithead. And by me not applying the teachings, I'm superior. So these people will ask all these erroneous questions. They'll ask these bad faith questions. And, I once knew an armchair philosopher, and his favorite line, well, who's to say? Ouch, I've got a splinter. Well, who's to say a splinter's bad? It's causing me pain. You have some tweezers? Who's to say anyone has tweezers? Oh my God, you're worthless. So, that guy, not you. So your arguments, your counters to the philosophers are legitimate. Just because someone's experiencing suffering doesn't mean that suffering is essential to their well-being, and that applying an antidote to it is foolhardy. Au contraire, we evolved to notice sufferings and find solutions for sufferings and find ways to avoid sufferings. That is an evolutionarily successful mechanism that we see replicated in many, many, many species. In fact, there's a wonderful term. I wonder if I'll remember it. When unrelated entities develop the same, evolve the same solution to the same problem, but have never been in contact with each other. I think it's called co-emergent evolution. I probably got that wrong. If you know the right name, please tell me in the chat window. But that is a function of evolution. We would not exist without evolution. Now, is evolution a god to be worshipped? No. But there's a certain wisdom in striving not to reinvent the wheel. So yes, I agree with you. You've proven successfully that although suffering can be avoided and it can create, but it's not necessarily essential to life. And then you run with a wonderful example. For example, suppose there were two people who struggle with a math problem. Person one happens to discover a technique which makes the current math problem and future math problems easier, can be applied by anyone. This means they have lessened the dukkha in their life, at least a little, at least in the realm of math problems. Well said. Person two did not yet discover that technique. Thus, dukkha is a part of their life when it comes to math problems. However, they are not yet aware that there is potentially a technique which might lessen it for them, i.e., if person one met them and shared it with them. So they are right that dukkha is part of the math problems, but they're wrong to think that dukkha is necessary to the math problems. And this is an important distinction. Some people say, our flaws are what make us human. Therefore, if we free ourselves from our flaws, we'll stop being human. Well, first of all, you're stating an hypothesis as a given. Our flaws make us human. Great. Prove it. There's something called the burden of proof logical fallacy. This is, if I say something and you disagree with it, prove me wrong. No. Prove yourself right. Carl Sagan said it elegantly. I'm going to paraphrase it horribly. Outlandish claims require outlandish evidence. The person making the claim has to defend the claim. So if someone says our flaws make us human or our suffering make us human, therefore we can't do anything about them, we'll cease to be human, they have to go back to the premise. Can they justify their premise? If not, they're a bad philosopher. And they don't deserve to graduate Philosophy 101. So the very people who would say suffering is awesome, it's necessary, well, we'll often infer, therefore forget about meditating. You didn't got to do it. It's a pain in the ass. I don't like doing it. I don't know how to do it. It annoys me. And you annoy me, so I don't want you doing it either. There is something observed around the world. Wherever individuals fish for crabs, you will find on wharfs large barrels. Sometimes they're blue and they're kind of like rounded off cubes full of crabs, live crabs, and occasionally one will make a break for it. And 9 times out of 10, his or her fellows will pull her back in, as if to say, I'm suffering and you're suffering, and if I'm suffering, you don't get to find a way out of suffering. You get to suffer right along with me. And that's really yucky, but that's one of the constants we observe in group therapy or group dynamics. The intoxicating quality of homostasis, the desire that things never change, even though everything changes all the time, overtly or subtly, gently or jarringly. But that's a topic for a different conversation. So there are people who don't like the Buddhist path, who don't like to meditate, who don't know how to meditate, And therefore, since they don't receive the joy of meditation, they don't want other people to joy and to savor the joy of meditation. And these people will look for reasons to sabotage others. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but it is a factor. So if someone is just attacking willy-nilly, just throwing pot shots at the basic teachings of the Buddha, thank them for their time, wish them well, and walk away from them. They're not. These are poor faith questions, not desiring answers, not desiring wisdom, just desiring to gum up the works. I think I was 12 when I discovered Monty Python's Flying Circus. And aficionados of Monty Python's Flying Circus will remember the argument clinic, where a man pops his head in. Is this where I go for the argument clinic? I already told you. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Oh, is this the argument? I already told you. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I didn't. Listen, this is not an argument. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. 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 No, this is just gainsaying. Argument is establishing a proposition and backing it up with facts. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. 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 So, what was really humorous to me in that it was that they were lampooning the difference between an intelligent argument and just moronic, poor faith gainsaying. Whatever you do, you will find people who gainsay. Whether you want to optimize your relationship, whether you want to go to the gym, whether you want to eat a healthy diet, whether you want to take your pet to the vet, you will find someone to poop all over your plans in a way that can make you even question reality. These people are not your friends. These people are well-spoken wolves in sheep's clothing. Americans are easily seduced by a posh English accent, which Alan Watts had. He was a man of letters, and he could speak eloquently. But a deep dive in the corpus of his works reveals that he knows far less than the enthusiastic Americans thought. The enthusiastic Americans who loved his accent and hung on his every word. When we listen to the memoirs of the people who dated him, the people who lived with him, they would say that his lofty words did not affect his character, did not affect his emotions or his choices or his ability to cope. The British used to have a saying, I'm not sure if they still do. Maybe you've heard this before. Let me know if you have. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. If it tastes terrible, it doesn't matter how special the ingredients are or how old the recipe is. It tastes terrible. That's what matters. Similarly, regardless of the poshness of our accent or the sophistication of our arguments, what matters is when people apply our teachings, including ourselves. Are they more peaceful or less peaceful, more joyful or less joyful, more loving or less loving, more wise or less wise? That's what really counts. What do you think? Please tell me. And the more confused and complicated, cryptic the answer, the better. And this person wrote this because he was being pelted by pseudo-intellectuals on Reddit. And hey, if you have a deficiency of pseudo-intellectuals in your life and you want people just to attack your character, go to Reddit. Reddit is the place for you. I think this is funny. I don't think you need to apologize for this at all. I think this is perfectly appropriate, perfectly funny. I'd like to tie this up in a big red bow, if that's okay. You did a good job of lampooning the folly of the gainsayers who are attacking the basic premise of Buddhism. You did a good job. I would like to metaphorically give you the key to the city and say, congratulations, you don't have to waste any more time and any more effort doing battle with the idiots. Imagine, if you will, a man standing in a cesspit, screaming at you to come join him in the cesspit so that he can wrestle you and drown you in the cesspit. No, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, but no thank you. Would you like a rope? Would you like some help getting out? No, I'm fine here. I just want you to join me so we can wrestle in the filth. No, thank you. Oh, you're scared, huh? No, thank you. So from this point forward, please don't squander your time and energy answering poor faith arguments. The path is simple. It can be mastered quickly and easily. Find someone to help you do that. I look forward to exploring the fine details of the path with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent about 8 hours almost every day studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So let us turn our attention to the latest iteration of Kind Gaze's Easy Meditation. This is a fun text based on the final meditation manual lauded by the 14th Dalai Lama, composed by the late Zalpodrol Rinpoche, a great Buddhist saint in Tibet. But it's lengthy, so we're probably only going to go through a portion of it this morning. Basically, we can go through it like in 3 sessions with overlapping bits, and that's just fine. Life's messy. That's okay. So who is this kind gaze person? Described in Sanskrit as Avalokiteshvara and in Tibetan as Chenrei Zig. It depends who you are. If you are defined by the path of being rigid, fearful, and controlling, then you'll probably take a superstitiously view kind gaze as an entity to be worshipped and supplicated. And that's fine if that's your deal. However, if you are traversing the path of being flexible and loving and laid back, then you'll probably view kind gaze as an archetype, whose iconography reminds us that we are already wired to master, no less practice, awareness and letting go, love and letting go, as well as bliss and letting go. And it's my intention that we will taste of all 3 of these this morning and during our practice. And if at any time you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, please immediately type your question in great detail in the chat window. Please do not wait till the end, for by the end the context will have been lost, the iron will have lost its heat, striking it will be unnecessary, and my brains will have turned into tapioca. So we're going to flip and flop between verbal stuff and silent meditation. And I have an ulterior motive, and that's to get you up to speed within 4 exercises so that you will demystify this whole meditation business. We begin with bringing Lama Kiano's practice of calling the teacher as from afar into Energy Work's path of bliss and letting go. Please chant with me. Let us invite real or imagined Guru Amitabha Karma Mundra to the crown of our head, that in the union of bliss and letting go we may train. As we breathe in, please silently and mentally recite the first half of the wish, Lama, come. During the exhalation, please silently and mentally recite the second half, to this crown. In time, we may feel sensations on our scalp. We might not. It matters neither way. Just play with the exercise. This brings us to the first of 4 exercises with which we will get up to speed. There are a radical few who refuse to mystify enlightenment and are very, very trenchant and practical with it, insisting that enlightenment is nothing less or nothing more than the mastery of the Eightfold Path. As children, I was mystified by the act of tying my shoes, but in time, after tears and effort and repetition, I got to the point where I could tie my shoes and do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That can be applied to virtually to any skill. It can be applied to the Eightfold Path. I like to begin explaining the Eightfold Path, oddly enough, at the 7th fold, which is mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the thoracic or ribcage region of our spinal cord. No, it did not evolve to support either extreme of mind blanking or concentrating. Instead, our sympathetic nervous system evolved to support perception, to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. It has been said that vulnerability is the price of perception. We never feel as vulnerable as when we are naked. Perhaps that is why this archetype of meditation is depicted as naked. So, you might ask, if we're not supposed to actively concentrate upon our breath, then what do we do? What do we do with our breath? Well, we can treat our breath the way piano students of yore treated their metronome. When we notice our body breathing in, we can silently and mentally recite the ungainly 12-syllable phrase, perceiving this very turbulent play of mind. And when we notice our body exhaling, we could silently and mentally recite an additional 12 syllables, relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. This is ungainly, but we're only doing this for a short period of time to get us ready for the next exercise. It's kind of like putting on your shoes before you go for a bicycle ride. So what I'd like to do right now is practice this for 16 rounds. What's a round? 1 inhalation, followed by 1 exhalation. The real question is how we're going to count 16 rounds on just the 4 fingers and 1 thumb of our left hand. This is where I get to introduce you to the concept of Bengali crease counting. Now, I got to give you a caveat. Well, let me first explain it. So every time I inhale, I advance the tip of my left thumb, touching it to one of the 12 sets of creases located on each, divided by my 4 fingers. I also touch the thumb to the various tips of the fingers. But here's some bad news. Because I'm doing all this jibber-jabbering, I'm breathing shorter and quicker than you. So in the time it takes me to do 16 rounds, you might only do 12 or 8. Don't worry about that. Don't force yourself to keep up. So now let us start practicing. So yes, during each inhalation we're wired to notice. We can notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. We can notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. We can notice the external, the internal, the physical, the mental, the pleasurable, the painful. We can notice the interesting, the boring, the glorious, and the grotesque. The interesting question is, what do we do with all that stuff that we notice? And that is exactly what we're going to explore during our next silent meditation exercise. But first, let's continue with some more chanting. This is where we explore the outer set of preliminary practices from the point of view of being flexible, loving, and laid back. Please chant with me. Let us courageously exercise our vulnerability to notice others' stress, that our seeds of empathy may grow. The contemplations I teach are not active but passive. I found that passive contemplation trumps active contemplation, but we'll explore that in greater detail several minutes from now. Please chant with me. Instead of torturing ourselves with a fear of karma, may we view interdependence as the opportunity for our love to lighten the loads of others. Allow me to elaborate. Whatever we choose, say, or do can affect others for good or ill. So rather than be paranoid by fear, let us be inspired by love to use this opportunity in the most wonderful way. Together. Rather than torment ourselves with a dread of death, may we view impermanence as that which makes of grasping and absurdity. Instead of straining to make the most of each precious meditation opportunity, we could simply flow from the scented spontaneity generated by mindfulness and meditation. At last, we are going to answer the musical question, how do we cope with all those things that we notice? And the answer is through meditation, which is the eighth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Every time we exhale, whether we mean to or not, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system, ensconced within both the lower lumbar region of our spinal cord, as well as the tippy top of its cervical region. This parasympathetic nervous system empowers us to both physically relax as well as mentally release. Let's take a deeper dive. Number 1. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. Number 2. Complex life forms on this planet evolve to think symbolically. Therefore, we can find it advantageous to sprinkle some figurative language into the mix. Kind of like adding cinnamon to your oatmeal cookies. Or like adding raisins to your cinnamon oatmeal cookies. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. Now, any good English teacher will remind us that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. Therefore, we must ask, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? The answer is obvious. How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky, a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although is tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. Perhaps that is why Amitabha Karma Mudra is depicted often as being translucent and non-graspable as a rainbow in the sky. During the next 16 or so inhalations, please silently and mentally recite the verb sitting and the adjective tall to remind the soft tissues of our body to generate a vertical traction between our tush and our head. During the next 16 exhalations, please silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing. By the way, one of the philosophers mentioned in the opening part of this morning's live stream is a fellow named Krishnamurti, who had the misfortune of being a slender and handsome young man who was raised by a New Agey cult, by some who wanted to worship him and some who wanted to sexually exploit him. This had an effect on his worldview. Mindfulness and meditation, the 7th and 8th folds of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, are the dynamo, the engine that drives the remaining 6 folds of the Eightfold Path, which I would like to illustrate by showing the 3 sets of benefits or fringe benefits to be had from a regular practice of mindfulness and meditation. And we will explore the first of those in just a few minutes. Let us now turn to the inner set of the preliminary practices, which have been influenced by the final meditation manual of Dzogchen Rinpoche, titled The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones, and absolutely lauded by the 14th Dalai Lama. Sadly, it's published in English as an appendix, for its commentary was written by an enthusiastic fellow who didn't understand the text, but the root text is published in English. I'm also working on a commentary on it. Please chant with me. In our compassion may we long to free all beings from the toxic tyranny of hate, engraving and clinging, metaphorically known as the 3 mental poisons. In our pragmatism, may our liberation of all others be fueled by our reliance on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students, described by the metaphor of the 3 wish-fulfilling jewels. So this is a significant edit because I'm introducing three vocabulary words. These vocabulary words will not make you or break you as far as spiritual enlightenment, but they will help to make you more sophisticated in terms of Buddhist literature. So let's take it from the top. In our pragmatism, may our liberation of all others be fueled by our reliance on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students, described by the metaphor of the three Vaishnava filling jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Rather than squander our time and energy in defensiveness, how much wiser could it be to learn all mistakes and lessons that effortlessly flow from the centered spontaneity of mindfulness and meditation? It's the lessons that flow, not necessarily the mistakes. A life squandered in competition and greatly is not to peace and fulfillment, better to live in cooperation and generosity. At life's end may this mind shoot At life's end may this mind shoot out crowns purifying, multiplying, and offering my stuff to the beings of nirvana and samsara. I wonder if I can make this a little, if I made this a little smaller. Oh, come on now. Let's hit the Home tab and the Reveal tab and just click this. If I reduce this from 24 to 22, there we go. We come now to the the first of three sets of fringe benefits from a regular practice of mindfulness and meditation. By regular practice, I mean approximately once every 12 hours or so. Loving kindness consists of 50% or comprises 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. That's hefty. Despite the fact armchair philosophers have been saying, oh, it sounds like attachment to me. Well, not the Buddha, big boy. So, let's explore this through the paradigm of bad news and good news. Bad news. When we rely upon the medial prefrontal cortex to actively concentrate, and when we rely upon the dorsolateral cortex to actively contemplate, our blood pools, collects, gathers, coalesces at our amygdala, at the bottom of our limbic system, the seat of both anxiety and aggression, which is darkly ironic, is it not? However, now for the good news. When instead of relying on active concentration. Instead, we rely on passive mindfulness. When we replace active contemplation with passive meditation, our blood shifts to our anterior cingulate gyrus, which is probably easier to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is why the greatest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. Perhaps this is also why Guru Amitabha Karma Mudra is depicted as beautiful. During our inhalation, let us kick back and watch the antics of minds, perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. As silently and mentally we recite, notice this. During our exhalation, let us relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Remember that phrase from our first exercise? It's come back. As silently and mentally we continue to recite the three-syllable verb relaxing. Let us bring Guru Yoga, also known as Lama Naljor, into Energy Work's path of bliss and letting go. This is our third sojourn into bliss and letting go. I'm going to teach you a synonym for the name of this archetype. Let us invite real or imagined Lama Opakme Yabum into our heart, mind. Let's try this again. I added a preposition again. Let us invite real or imagined Lama Opakme Yabum to our heart, mind. That in the union of bliss and letting go we may train. Did you know that the second fringe benefit of the regular training in mindfulness and meditation is the effortless effort, which is the sixth fold of the Buddha's eightfold path? Those traversing the path of being rigid, fearful, and controlling only believe in effort. Those who practice the path of being flexible, laid back, and loving and prefer their effort to be effortless. Allow me to illustrate. Consider, if you will, this gal who appears to be actively sporting in tantric union. This reminds us that contrivance is always trumped by spontaneity. Consider her partner, who appears to be passively savoring the same tantric union. This reminds us that not all spontaneity is created equal, and that the scattered spontaneity we might experience after our third espresso will always be trumped by the centered spontaneity that is the byproduct of mindfulness and meditation. Love's centered spontaneity that we referred to a few moments ago. As we, during our inhalation, let us kick back and watch the antics of mind as silently and mentally we recite the demonstrative pronoun this, thus helping our prefrontal, thus helping our brain to participate and align with the wiring of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Similarly, during our exhalation, as we relax into mind's non-graspable nature, we could silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease, which functions as a synonym of relax. Having successfully climbed to contemplative cruising altitude, together as a team, let us meditate as transformatively as General Leia Organa on Ajahn Class, under the guidance, under the guidance of Luke Skywalker. Come, let us view letting go through a philosophical lens, as we bring the illusion of the horizontal duality of us and them into the dance of impermanence and interdependence, known as Madhyamaka's yoga of inconceivability. Also, it comes down to our loss could be as impermanent and interdependent as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. All bodies or forms could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this communication or speech. All interpersonal speech could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this mind. All bonds could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into our vast empty void. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although tantalizing to the eye could be not graspable to the hand. This brings us to the third set of fringe benefits of regularly training in mindfulness and meditation. The first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is the right view of impermanence. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we cannot help but notice change. Sometimes subtle, sometimes jarring, sometimes pleasurable, sometimes painful, sometimes interesting, sometimes boring, sometimes glorious, sometimes grotesque. We can notice changes in that which we see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. We can notice changes in our emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. Ever-changing, one and all, there is nothing permanent to grasp. I invoke the wish of ending money, jewel of love, and the purifying baby lotus of letting go, supplicating with whom may love and letting go be mastered by all. Let us bring the experience of the four bases of mindfulness into the conventional path of love and letting go, where it is love that is emphasized and it is jealousy that is left over. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist chanting, or their application, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window the moment the question appears to you. Rather than indulge or controlling tendencies with the follies of visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these words of love in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. May all minds of all beings know be as peacefully wise as the mind of a real Lord. Imagine Buddha symbolized by a tea clay, one suitable seed or bija mantra. So we're taking this extensive loving wish and shrinking it down to just 6 syllables. During our inhalation, we could recite bija wise, and during our exhalation, we could recite for all minds. What is the philosopher's stone that transforms the lead of mindless mantra recitation into the gold of spiritually protective mantra meditation? It is twofold. During our inhalation, we could silently, mentally, and passively recite the same 6 italicized syllables. During our exhalation, we can physically relax as best we can while striving to chant this 6-syllable mantra 8 times per breath. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. May all relationships of all beings know be as joyfully loving as a real or imagined Buddha's communication symbolized by the 6-syllable mantra. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. So we're going to focus on health right now. So before we do, I want to show you an image of one of my neighbors. Okay, so this is Jason, and he is struggling with cancer. And so, if he could be the poster boy for the medical needs of all beings everywhere, that might be helpful. May all bodies of all beings now enjoy the beautiful health as seen in Buddhist statuary, depicting the blissful body of a real or imagined Devi or Yatama archetype of enlightenment such as Chenrezig. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. May all circumstances or lots of, so we're going to turn our attention now to circumstances. And of course, we want all circumstances of all beings to be wonderful. But may our thoughts turn to those enduring the genocides. The genocides in Palestine and the genocides in Jordan, as well as the Congo. May all circumstances or lots of all beings now have the good fortune or boon, as a Buddha's real or imagined paratus pirland or vati. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. The great Karma Jigme of Tibet taught the essence of the Prakti Moksha vows is simply non-violence. Let us view letting go through a physiological lens as we bring the experience of the 4 bases of mindfulness into the ultimate path of love and letting go, where it is letting go that is emphasized and where it is pride that is leapt over. Please chant with me. Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for literal statements, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. As we inhale, all circumstances or lots could appear quite vivid. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel it is not graspable, avoid as a real or imagined paradise or vati of light. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, om mani mimi yung. Mani mimi yung, om 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 mani mimi yung. As we inhale, our bodies or forms could feel quite sensual. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel it is not graspable, or for it is a real or imagined octopoiedom of light. Oh, let's see, let's try this again. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. As we inhale, the interpersonal experience of communication or speech could sound quite resounding. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, it could feel it is not graspable, or if it is a real or imagined mantra of light. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Mani mimi yung, om mani mimi yung. As we inhale, we can notice all minds, perceptions, emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings quite clearly. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel as not graspable or void as a real or imagined bija seed set up of light. Om mani me me yung mani me me yung om 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 mani me me yung. Om mani me me yung mani me me yung om mani me me yung mani me me yung om mani me me yung mani me me yung om mani me me yung mani me me yung. Let us seal this practice by percussively chanting the love that wishes for universal enlightenment and well-being. May all minds of all beings lucid yet void now be as enlightened as a Buddha's mind symbolized by a one-syllable bija. May all speech of all beings resounding yet void now be as loving as a Buddha's speech symbolized by a multi-syllable mantra. May all forms of all beings sensual yet void now be as healthy as a yidam depicted in Buddha's statuary. May all lots of all beings appearing yet void now be as fortunate as a pure land of law depicted in Buddhist paintings. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 1/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.